Pvmers have been dying for content. We have not had an original new piece of PvM since Nightmare was released 2 years and 4 months ago. You can even argue Nightmare isn't an original piece of content, as much of her design pulled from Neck's Angel of Death in RS3. In that case, the last real piece of real PvM we had was 4 years ago with the Theater of Blood. Yes, I am skipping over Sarachnis for some reason. We've been living off various hard mode versions of already existing content, which have been hit or miss at best. Challenge mode Chambers has cranked defense on half the bosses, and muttadile exists. Phosani's literally replaced original Nightmare. Hard mode Top is just a grind for cosmetics before you return to regular mode. With Raids 3 coming in a few months, there is a ton of hype riding on this. The Raids 3 reward designs are now in an excellent place that compares to the power of the other Raids rewards. They've also had many players coming out to test the raid as well, and from the murmurs I've heard around the community, it lives up to their expectations design-wise. Jagex has been, for the most part, designing deep and complex raids with incredibly deep skill ceilings. I have one final concern for Raids 3 that I've had with every other piece of PvM in OSRS, that Raids 3 has the potential to solve completely. Tombs of a Masket will be adding a difficulty scaling system they are calling invocations. There are going to be negative multipliers you can choose ahead of time for the raid that will make the raid more difficult, but also more rewarding. They haven't given any example of these yet, but what I'm picturing as examples are something like the boss will sap prayer with each attack, or damaging tiles will appear periodically around the floor of the arenas. There's definitely going to be a ton of these, and they will give us complete customizability over the challenge of the raid. For the hyper gamers, the Wookses and the Exacts, they'll be piling on invocation after invocation for a true challenge. For people looking to get into raiding, they've said the floor level raid with no invocations will likely be easier than Chambers or Tob. The hyper gamers are the players I'm worried about, as they have been shafted the hardest for the past few years by lack of updates. A proper fleshed out difficulty curve is really important for a good raid. Tob is incredibly difficult and deep, there are tons of skills to learn, and it's incredibly complicated room-wise. Nylos are a great example. Tob, on the other hand, is extremely punishing for new players looking to get into it. They've curbed this slightly with the addition of entry mode Tob, but it's still incredibly punishing. The fact the raid ends if your entire team dies and you are all paying 100k to get your stuff back is rough to say the least. Meanwhile, Chambers is incredibly easy to get into. You can die as many times as you want in a raid, but it's lacking that same difficulty spice that Tob has at a higher level. What is completely unexplored from any piece of content in Old School is rewarding those extremely high-level players. The hardest pieces of content with the absolute deepest skill ceilings that come to mind are Very Fast Inferno speedruns and Solo Theater of Blood. Doing either of these pieces of content in this way pushes your skills to the absolute extreme. It's hard to even describe how much goes on in an Inferno speedrun. The order we kill things in, where we pull monsters to, how we immediately react to any given wave. It's a game of chess, and the way you go about it changes depending on your hits, how you get hit, and what waves you are given. Solo Tob, you'll have to forgive me, I haven't done one yet. Not many people in this game have. Just simply requires near perfect play to get through any of it. Losing ticks in Nilo Room, wasting tiles at Zarpus, missing a single tick eat over the hundreds of times you're going to end up tick eating over a run. Any of that happens, and you're going to end up dying. Both of these pieces of content push the skill of this game to the absolute extreme, and neither are rewarding. Inferno is negative money. Solo Tob is technically profitable if you are consistent, but pretty much no one is. Even with consistency, it's worse than Duo Tob for GP. This is where the Raids 3 invocations can come in a big way. Like the last video, I'm going to not so briefly talk about RuneScape 3. I promise this is going to be worth it. I've been wanting to talk about this boss for so long, and you can't stop me. You cannot talk about scaling difficulty in RuneScape without mentioning Telos. I only killed Telos once before moving over to Old School, so most of my information is from a video made by Evil Lucario, who is effectively RS3's Wooks. In March of 2016, Jagex added God Wars Dungeon 2 to RuneScape 3. 4 new generals were added, representing the gods Seren, Zamorak, Zeros, and Sliske. They also added one final solo boss to the center of the area that could only be accessed by killing each of the generals around the area in a very similar way to Nex, Telos, which was accessible a few months after the dungeon's release. I gush about this boss constantly at any chance I get, This is easily the coolest boss they have added to the other game, and it's not because of the mechanics in his fight, well, those are very cool in their own right, it's because of his reward system. Telos dropped the first set of tier 92 weapons. We don't really have tiered weapons in OSRS, but I would say our T-bow and scythe would be the equivalent of level 85 weapons in RS3. So these were extremely powerful weapons to surpass even those. After you defeat Telos, several things happen. First, the game will show you exactly what Telos dropped that kill and place it in a loot chest. It will then roll to increase his difficulty for the next kill from anywhere from 5 to 20% randomly. The game calls this Enrage. You have two choices now. You can claim that loot in the chest and choose the Enrage for the next kill, up to as hard as you have unlocked. Or you can choose to leave the loot in the chest and fight him at the difficulty the game has set him to the next time. If you choose the latter, should you die in the next attempt, you will lose a huge chunk of that reward. Keep in mind you cannot teleport out of the Telos encounter. This is a fight to the death. And if you should end up dying, you will be forced to claim what you can, and your kill streak will end. If you get another kill in a row, when the game rolls your loot, it will check your current kill streak and Telos' current Enrage, increasing your loot accordingly, then placing that extra loot in the chest. Again, Telos will roll for difficulty increase, and you can either claim the loot you have now, or continue on. Telos scales up to a cap of 4,000% increased Enrage. To put this difficulty into perspective, it took the player base 13.5 months after release to obtain the first 4,000% Enrage kill. The chest can also store a maximum of 200 kills worth of loot before you are forced to claim it. A very select handful of extremely good players are capable of completing something called a 200 kill streak. And the game in turn pours money into these players' pockets. To this day, having checked the spreadsheet while editing this video, only 86 people have even completed a single 200 kill streak. And only Evil Lucario and Mr. Bob have done a 4,000% Enrage for the entirety of the 200 kill streak. For most of these streaks, these players started at 0% rage and ended at roughly 2,300%. With each additional kill on a streak, the game gives additional regular loot and a higher chance of unique. The base chance of unique at 100% rage and on the very first kill of the streak is 1 out of 263. With roughly every kill after 100, the rate for uniques is capped at a maximum of 1 out of 15. This introduces this incredibly robust and interesting risk/reward system, taken to the absolute extreme by the best players. After 15 kills into the streak, the loot caps at a loss of 25% of all the rewards should you die. So as soon as you get an incredibly valuable reward, you need to decide whether continuing is worth the risk of losing that item. And the loot system is rewarding enough that if you are confident you can complete the next kill, it is always worth doing. There are various far more expensive ammunitions and degradable armors, and these elite players will spend whatever that cost is just to minimize the risk of losing their stored loot and their streak. They have a Zenite equivalent gem bolt, for example, that costs the equivalent of 10k per bolt, which they use constantly. This parallels with using Sandfuse in Inferno or Sweets in a solo Tob. Evil Lucario made a video about tracking his experience with Telos over an entire month, with 8 successful kill streaks and 4 failed. Total over the month, even with the failed streaks, he made 232 million GP an hour, with a supply cost of about 25 million per hour. Converting that from RuneScape 3 fun bucks to old school equivalent at the time, that was roughly 46.4 million GP an hour old school, with a 5 million GP an hour supply cost. A third of that total loot was not even uniques, just massive amounts of regular loot, which comes from killing the boss on such a high streak. The best way to make GP possible, outside of getting a job and buying bonds for old school RuneScape, was to not play old school and instead hop on RuneScape 3 and do Telos, swapping the gold over. Not that that's any more feasible than getting a real job. Horrible.
Yes, I did it! About time! Yes! Yes! Oh, that took so long.
What does any of this have to do with Raids 3? With Raids 3 having scaling difficulty, this is the old school team's chance to add some actual rewarding content for high-level PvMers. Every other hard mode raid release ended up being hilariously worse GP than its regular counterpart overall. The high-level community is the backbone of this game. I know so many high-level PvMers who have quit the game out of boredom, having done literally all content in the game. I've noticed a general theme with many of the streamers who play at this insane level being relatively bored of the game in general, playing more so out of necessity than a joy for the game. Players like Wooks come out of hiding only with major content releases to conquer it, then go back into hibernation. These are the players that generate buzz and get new players to pick up the game. The best possible money in OSRS is either Nex, due to majority of the player base not wanting to kill her, but Torva having such high demand, or various boosting methods which don't progress an account. If Raids 3 becomes the best GP by far, should you have the cojones to slap on a ton of invocations, this could revitalize the PvM community in general. Raids 3, if they do it right with invocations, has the potential to encourage all players to participate, from the noobiest of noobs to the battle-hardened gods. A perfectly fleshed out difficulty scaling. Based on the way they've handled hard mode raids, I have some serious concerns Jagex will not be willing to make invocations rewarding enough. I'm picturing something hilariously dumb like the rewards only scaling up to a cap of a certain amount of invocations, like if at 10 invocations there was no point in adding more. If a set meta comes out with the invocations among the community that is the optimal profit, I will be incredibly disappointed. The rewards should scale exponentially with each invocation added. Whoever is capable of consistently completing raids with the most invocations should be by far the most rewarded player loot-wise. It doesn't need to be 50 mil GP an hour for them, but it should be the best GP in the game by far should you be good enough. Each hard mode raid release so far was effectively only for cosmetics. Jagex genuinely seems afraid to reward their players who put in more effort. A 13% increased rare drop rate for a 20% longer raid, ignoring how much harder and more annoying the raid is, from hard mode Chob genuinely felt like a slap in the face. We saw this with Nex as well. The boss is not rewarding from an engagement standpoint, so the majority of the high-level community has moved on to other content instead. The thing that grabbed my attention and pulled me into this game originally was the gigantic Wooks Inferno streams that got thousands of viewers. I've seen people say we don't need to cater to the high-level players, as they will play this game regardless. But these players make content that drives viewership, which makes them by far the most important chunk of the player base. Adding a new skilling minigame or PvP update may invite some new players to start the game, but it's not even close to a new gigantic PvM release. Even though these players may not be interacting with this content, they are watching it. Encouraging these extreme, high-level players to do content in the most difficult way possible drives viewership, which in turn gets people logging in. The game cannot thrive without these players. If Raids 3 is not rewarding for the extreme difficulty invocations, the best players will make content on how they did a raid once at the hardest difficulty and then go back into hibernation. There are too many years riding on this raid for that to happen. Jagex needs to blow this out of the park. If you're watching this video around when it goes up, I will be live on Twitch. I'm still going for that sub 50 Inferno. We've pushed the time down to a 51:23, but I can't stop throwing runs. I am quite sick of not getting the time, so I plan on getting it this stream. Throwing for content was fun, but I think I'm done now. And that's it for the video. Leave a like if you liked it, and or subscribe. Thanks, guys.